And so when it comes to abortion, talk to me about, all right, so there's the Mississippi case, which is kind of the central case here. Obviously, there was a Texas case. I don't know, you talk to me about whether that, what you saw in those arguments and decisions may play into this. But ultimately, the Mississippi case, about 15 weeks. We're going to find out probably that last week of June what comes of it. What did you see during the arguments that potentially gives you a sense of where you see them going here? And talk to me about how this could play out given how contentious this is, how big this is, and to what extent are they looking at the law, but also aware that there's a country out there of 350 million people who all have an opinion on this?
I thought the arguments indicated that the court is going to not only uphold that Mississippi law, which is bans abortion at 15 weeks, but potentially overturn Roe versus Wade, which would mean that the states could decide whether they wanted to ban abortion or whether they want to greatly restrict it. It becomes a political issue. And so you will have states like Mississippi and probably 10 or 12 others who will either ban or certainly greatly restrict abortion. Then you'll have other states like New York, California, and Illinois, the ones that you would think more the blue states, that will either, allow even more access to abortion. It'll be up to them, whatever they want to do, whatever the political process will support. So I did feel at the end of those arguments that this court might overturn Roe. And the reason that when people say Roe is settled law, if you think about some of the decisions the court has reached where they've overturned precedent, like say gay rights, those decisions have been widely accepted by the public. And they're not controversial at all. That's a law that is, that's a case that is settled law. There's no danger of the Supreme Court rethinking any of that. Roe, on the other hand, has been controversial and remains controversial. The Mississippi ban of 15 weeks is a ban that the polling shows a time frame that most Americans think is entirely reasonable. So, if they were to allow that ban, the question is, well, where are they going to draw the line? And that's a really hard question to answer. And that's why I think it's hard to uphold the ban without overturning Roe. And the subsequent case, Casey, which was a 1992 decision, which basically says states cannot ban abortion or, pass laws that put an undue burden on a woman's right under the Constitution to have an abortion before the fetus is viable. Which is now, 22, 23 weeks. So 15 weeks is a big jump back from that. But the number of abortions and the Americans' views on abortions after 15 weeks, very low, very small number. And polling shows that, most Americans think that's 15 weeks would be good enough.
So
it's hard to uphold that under the legal framework of Roe versus Wade. So that's why I think,
right. I was going to say, why not split the difference then and, go with 15 weeks, but not go so far as to completely overturn.
Some legal commentators are speculating that that's what the Chief Justice is trying to do. And I thought from his questions, he's clearly looking for a way to uphold the Mississippi law and allow that 15-week ban, but not overturn Roe. I thought the other five, we're like, you can't uphold Roe. Roe says that there's no bans or great restrictions on abortion before viability, and that's not 15 weeks. So if you're going to be honest about what we're doing, you have to, you have to be honest about it. This effectively would overturn Roe. So how that all is working out now. The interesting thing about Justice Barrett joining the court and becoming that sixth conservative voice and potentially vote on these cases is that Roberts doesn't have any more power. Like he once was the swing vote. Now he's one of six. So his vote is not going to matter. So if he thinks that the court shouldn't overturn Roe, but the other five do, he loses.
Do you see a scenario? So there's the three liberals plus Roberts puts you at four. Then you've got five other conservatives. Do you see a scenario, or is there a likely candidate from your perspective based on previous comments or previous rulings?
No.
Any of those other five potentially come over to the uphold Roe? You don't.
I don't. I thought the two that we would look at, but the only one we know how they'll rule on abortion is Justice Thomas. He's the only one that has been on the court to decide that issue in 92. He would have overturned it then, with Scalia, with Rehnquist. I mean, they would have overturned it, and they thought they had the votes to until, they started peeling off. But I thought from Justice Kavanaugh's questions, he was saying that basically the court is going to be neutral on abortion. We are not going to say that there's you can have a ban or you can't have a ban. We're stepping out of this. This is going to be a political decision. It's going to be in the political process. And I didn't get the sense from Justice Barrett that she thought that was unreasonable either. I didn't have that sense that she. But again, I have not privy to these discussions behind the scenes. I do think there'll be a lot of pressure, and you're going to see it probably starting in around late March. Newspaper editorials, commentary about their comments that Roe was settled law during the confirmation hearing. And that's just a stock answer that all justices do, is the Ginsburg model. But that Susan Collins, they're going to throw Susan Collins at Kavanaugh. You'll see a lot of pressure outside the court on Kavanaugh. And so that would be the hope, that they could peel him off to get 5 votes that would potentially save Roe versus Wade.
And is there any precedent for like these types of public campaigns trying to outside groups?
Absolutely. And many people think that it was effective because think back to Obamacare, when the court was asked to decide whether that was constitutional. Never before had the government told you as a consumer that you had to buy something or face a penalty. It was, there were serious arguments that was unconstitutional. And during arguments, it looked like the justices were poised to strike down Obamacare, period. President Obama's signature achievement. All of us had to have insurance. We had to buy insurance or pay a penalty. But during people were out of their minds about, they thought that, they were the lawyer for, the Obama administration had not done a good job. Well, in fact, he did an excellent job. And then the pressure started, the pressure campaign with the editorials and with, on the Sunday talk shows about, on Roberts, and they were solely focused on Roberts. The columns, the Post had some everywhere. And as we know, Roberts would have struck down Obamacare vote. So he changed his vote to save it. Now, was that because of the public campaign? Who knows? And he may have convinced himself that it wasn't, but I think there are justices on the Supreme Court who think it was.
And what's the legal rationale in simple terms as to why conservatives have always been opposed or don't believe that abortion is constitutional?
That's because it's not in the Constitution. That's what they say. There's no right to abortion in the Constitution. And they don't believe that it's the role of the court to make up new constitutional rights. There's a process for that. There's a political process for constitutional amendments. And so they take a much more cabined approach to constitutional interpretation, that it should reflect, the views more of the framers. And that should be how we interpret it. Because otherwise, and again, this is what conservatives believe, courts are just how judges express their policy preferences. Unelected judges, unaccountable to the public, potentially on the court for their lifetime, the rest of their lives, will be making policy decisions that have no, kind of way of being reviewed because they're outside the political process. That's their argument for why it's dangerous to kind of try to read into the Constitution, whether it's under privacy grounds or whatever rights that aren't there, that aren't clear.
And so if you're an abortion rights supporter and you're concerned about the potential for Roe v. Wade going down, what are their avenues moving forward, I guess, July and on at a state level and federal level?
It's already started, as I'm sure you've seen. I mean, we already have seen states, more the blue states, passing laws that guarantee a woman's right to abortion, and really kind of some enshrining that in their state constitutions. So they've already said, well, whatever the court does, we're going to allow it. there's an
And because it's
effort.
in the state level, that'll be allowed regardless of what the Supreme Court says, because it's
Right.
state
Court,
level. Yeah.
if the court says we're getting out of this issue, you guys do what you want, you know, then that'll be interesting because then politicians will have to make real decisions. Right now, you see a lot of politicians, particularly Republicans, who will take extreme positions on abortion to pander to certain aspects of the electorate, whether it's their base or whatever. You know, they'll take these extreme positions, and there's no cost to them because they know the Supreme Court will strike that law down. So they can kind of pander on the issue and not really take it. Well, that will stop. You know, that they won't be able to do that anymore, but their votes will be real all of a sudden. If they say I'm voting to ban abortion, you know, and you're in Georgia and you think, well, I want to ban abortion because, you know, look at, you know, everybody that, you know, I know down there that opposes it. Well, listen, there's a lot of people in Georgia that think that should not be banned. And, you know, Georgia is not a red state like it used to be. And, you know, next thing you know, you've got a challenger. I think if the court does this, it will really electrify Democratic voters, especially women. And
And
so,
can
you know,
you and could Congress do this on a federal level? If the court says get out, does the House and Senate could they pass a federal law saying abortion is legal?
yes, and there's certainly efforts to do that right now, but Congress isn't touching it.
Until they need to.
Or maybe they won't. I mean, again,
Hmm.
the issue of abortion has become so politicized, and you know, at times you see people unwilling to take positions on it or take kind of false positions on it because they know that the courts are going to strike it down. Whether it even gets the lower courts have to follow whatever the Supreme Court says. So you know, right now, like you've got a Democratic Senate and House, a Democratic president. You know, you would think now, if you're worried about abortion rights, now would be the time to like pass that law. You know, what do we, you know, like let's talk, but it has no momentum right now.